Welcome to Before the Work Begins with me, Jo Hutton, senior yoga teacher and author of best-selling Substack Yoga for Tired People. And in this podcast, we speak to the movers, the shakers and the creatives and find out what they are doing before the work begins. Are they really getting up at 5 a.m. and taking cold plunges, or are they just trying to get by like the rest of us? I hope you enjoy. So today I'm joined by the local legend himself, Alfie Joey, and I am so pleased that we are starting with you because you were the voice of mornings for Newcastle for such a long time. And when I was looking into your career history, oh my goodness, Alfie, you have done absolutely everything. You've had 4 yeses from Britain Got Talent judges. You've been a priest, a monk, a Harrods toy demonstrator. And what does your morning look like now? This podcast's obviously called Before the Work Begins, but what is your work like now, Alfie?
Well, very different to some of the things you've just mentioned. At the minute, I tend to get up about 6 o'clock.
Okay.
And I go downstairs before everybody else.
Yeah.
I put the kettle on, the regular stuff. And then generally, I'll drop people off, my wife at work, my children at school, or my son cycles now. I usually return home, put the kettle on again. If I'm not going out to do a podcast, if I'm not getting ready for a keynote speech or not travelling to do a talk or a business conference or a charity, I'll usually do an accountability call in my kitchen or in my little art study with a pal who is in Barnard Castle. He's another public speaker. And we just motivate each other and we just have each other on silent. He introduced me to something called Focusmate. Have you heard of Focusmate?
No, I've never heard of that. What's that?
It's not an app, it's a website. And say you've got the blank morning, you think, I've got to get quite a bit done. But you're one of them people who, like me, procrastinate, and whatever your Achilles heel is, mine would be, I'll just put the kettle on again. I'll just see what's in the fridge. You block off appointments, and then you basically hear this chime, and on screen, on your laptop or your phone, someone from somewhere else in the world comes on screen.
That's amazing.
What are you doing today? And they'll say, I'm doing the laundry. I'll say, I'm getting ready for a keynote speech. And then you go, okay, see you at the end, press mute. They're on camera, you're on camera. And at the end of the hour, bling, this gong goes off. How'd you get on? I did this, I did that. So you're accountable. And it's a bit of company as well if you work from home, as I often do.
That's amazing. So is it like body doubling?
Yeah, very similar. Alexandra introduced me to that, but usually we just use each other.
That's brilliant because it can get quite lonely, can't it, if you work from home?
I never really have a problem with loneliness because I always find I'm such a busy person, sometimes a busy fool. And so I really don't suffer from loneliness. I'm very lucky. I sometimes need solitary, quiet time, just silence, because a lot of my life is in public, racing about, dealing with lots of people, speaking to lots of people, being in busy rooms, awards nights. All of that is a flurry of activity. So I quite like the quietness of the other side.
When you speak about the work that you do, it seems that you have quite a lot of stuff happening in the evenings, but you also have stuff happening in the mornings. Do you find that you are able to have a routine?
Not really, because my diary is so erratic. So, for instance, September, October, November is the awards event season, preparing for business conferences where I might be interviewing 5 or 10 people. So I've got to prepare that, I've got to get ready for that. It mounts up, but sometimes I might do that during the day and then dash into a hospital at night to facilitate a panel there. That's a very busy day. But that's a very busy few days preparing for that. And then the next day I might be doing coaching one person. So it's very, very varied.
Are you the type of person that thrives on novelty, or do you like a routine?
I love variety, but it does come with a lot of chaos. So it's, who am I today? Where am I today? What head have I got on? I have to compartmentalise a lot, Joe. So let's focus on this, just this. What's in front of you now? More recently, I've started to look at 2 or 3 events ahead and do them in reverse. Prepare the one at the end of the week So that is ready and you're not worrying about that.
And for people who don't know your career, because
Yeah. Lots of people won't.
Can you talk us through your absolutely amazing plethora of careers?
I usually, when I'm opening at a conference or something, just to explain who I am, because a lot of people don't know, I usually do it in reverse. So currently I'm a keynote speaker. I host lots of events. I'm sometimes an illustrator. Before that, I worked on the BBC for 15 years. I was the breakfast show host largely. Before that, I was a stand-up comedian. Before that, I was a monk in a monastery or a religious order. And then before that, I trained to be a priest. And before that, I was a child. So it's not that different. To me, it's very ordinary, you know. It's quite a boring life to look back on. But a lot of people go, wow, that's a bit odd.
At first, when I looked at your career trajectory, I was like, that seems completely random. But there is definitely a commonality between all of the things. For all of them, you have to be interested in people.
Yeah.
You have to be able to observe. Are you a listener, Alfie, do you think?
That's a great question. Yeah, you have to be. I think you have to be. If you want to be a good speaker, you've got to be a good listener. If you want to be a good radio DJ, you've got to be a good listener. Even if you want to be a decent comedian, you've got to. I've definitely learned over the years how to listen better, and I'm constantly trying to work on it. But I think a massive part of being good at anything is awareness. And that's the only way you can grow, the only way you can develop a skill is to listen to yourself. And it's interesting, I've been talking a lot lately about introverts and extroverts. Because everybody presumes I'm this wild extrovert. And I'm as boring as they come. You wouldn't believe how dull I am, Joe. So I was a high extrovert. I was so annoying when I was younger, looking back. And I did a Myers-Briggs personality test, and I was high extrovert. Years later, I did the personality test again when I was at the BBC. Well, I don't know if you know Charlie Charlton. I used to co-host with her quite a few years. And we did a joint Myers-Briggs test. And we did it to see what the power dynamic, high status, low status, who was who on the show. And I was an introvert. I have no problem at work talking to 3,000 people. Fine, that's a job. But on the table at an awards dinner where there's 10 people around a table, I just think, oh, this is hard work.
Yeah.
This is really tough. I've got to really work at that. Because it's work, and I do take it really seriously, and I want to be the best for the client that I can be. I now say, don't put me on that table. Let me work for you. I'll go around, I'll mingle, I'll chat to people professionally, I'll do all the announcements, but let me just eat chips with the tech guys out the back. And I'll just keep going through the script and work for you. Because that's easily the hardest part of the job is doing that sort of 10 people around a table who you don't really know.
And do you feel like you've always been interested in work and people, or do you think that's something that you've had to learn as you've got older?
Yeah, I think I'm always dealing with it. I'm always trying to be aware of it. But it's funny you use the word work. I've never considered what I do work. I'm a very lucky person. Same. I've always done what I've loved. So I say this to my kids over and over again, you know, find something you like to do for a job and you'll never work again. It won't feel like work. Yeah. And I've got to be careful sometimes I take too much on because it doesn't feel like work. So I'm one of the lucky people.
So if we go back to your timeline, if we can go all the way back, you were brought up in a mining village. Could you tell us a little bit about what a morning would have looked like then? Yeah,
so I was brought up in Thornley, County Durham, where my dad was a coal miner. I mean, Mum had loads of jobs. She was a bit like me. She always had 3 jobs on the go at any one time. It was, again, very busy household, very chaotic. My dad worked shifts, so that was always imposing on the family. Everything was built around when he was asleep, usually during the day. And my mum, she was a barmaid, she was a caretaker in the school. She went and lit all people's fires in the mornings. She did painting and decorating for people. She was just constantly working. She was constantly shattered as well because she was just getting tea ready for me dad coming in. So mornings, I remember walking to school. I'd walk over the old closed coal mine of Thornley to get to my school. I'd often walk to school to my headmaster. He was a very popular man. He was lovely. He was one of my heroes, and we'd often take turns in carrying his briefcase. That was a badge of honour, and he was so entertaining. And then, as I grew up, my morning routine was built around paper rounds.
Yeah. So you've always been a grafter. You've always had a job.
Yes, always. And I look back, and I think I was always hustling, always trying to earn money. I was this time of year I'd have been out carol singing. We did that. I would go out doing paper rounds. We would do people's gardens for money.
You're saying we there is the
There was a
people
gang
you've
of
got
us.
in
Yeah.
yeah.
There was a good group of pals, and we were always making up games, always filling the time, all sorts of imaginative games. That's I've carried on doing, really.
Yeah, it feels like you've continued that imaginative working in a pantomime. It's a big gang of people, isn't it?
Yeah, it's collaboration. Yeah.
And being called to the Catholic priesthood was not a very common thing.
No.
So what was it that called you to that then?
Well, that's again another good question, because I don't know is the answer. And I look back and think, what was going on? Because my dad was Catholic but didn't go to church. He'd never gone to church. My mum wasn't Catholic. And yet I wanted to be a priest. They didn't have social workers back then, but the priest was kind of, I was very boringly nice. So when I'd do my paper round, I'd knock on people's windows and say, do you want some shopping, and stuff like that. So maybe it was that kind of role that I saw the priest do, and I thought, I could do something like that. Also, it's a bit showbiz. You've got a captive audience, you put a costume on, the lights are on you, you get to tell a story. So there is that to it as well. And it's a very varied job. So you go into hospitals, prisons, you're with people in weddings, funerals. So it's a very varied job.
I would love to know what a morning routine in the Catholic priesthood.
Well, a lot of it, it's funny, Joe, because I left the religious house I was in 28 years ago, or thereabouts. They asked me back a couple of weeks ago to coach the young brothers in sort of humour and communication. So I went back, and it was very, very strange. But it was brilliant. It was lovely to go back. But they said, your session will be at 9 o'clock, but we're having morning prayer and mass and all the things that I'd done by habit. That was my life for 15 years. Usually it was get up very early, go down, sit in a church in silence, and then you do your morning prayers, and then you have a little gap, and then there's a mass. Then you'd have evening prayer and stuff like that. And it was funny because I haven't been back. I don't go to church anymore. I've got a very different life now. But all the brothers were there around the table, and Father John, who'd asked me back, just broke into Salve Regina Mater Misericordiae, and I knew every word. I haven't done it for nearly 30 years.
I've meditated for a very, very long time, and I always think that prayer and meditation, though they are different, there is a lot of similarity between the two. Do you do any kind of like meditation or anything?
I think what my meditation is now is, and has been for about the last 10, maybe more years, is drawn. You can't worry about anything else or think about anything else. So when I was on the radio, I started drawing pictures. Before I went in to do a really early morning show, I would get up an hour before. I would go in just to give me some calm, because again, being on the radio, I was high voltage. I was going.
Yeah, you were.
I look back and feel sorry for the team, because here he is again with his energy and his positivity. We were great friends. I went out with them last week, but that was my process to get into it. Every morning, I cycled to the BBC from Gateshead. That's the question I'm still asked most when I bump into old listeners. They'll always go, "Did you really cycle in every day?" And because I used to do the weather through my journey to work at the BBC, we were in this tomb. We didn't have any windows, so I couldn't actually see what the weather was like. So sometimes you would say, "Oh, it's a sunny day today," and you get text, "Not now, it's rain," and you couldn't see.
And so, do you feel like you have quite a good ability to flip from that quite low introspective energy to the high energy? Do you feel like you've got a good ability to move through the energy then?
Well, I have to.
Yeah.
I have to. I find preparation's the key. Yeah. You have to do certain things like get the right amount of sleep, which I'm terrible for.
And how do you prepare for a daily radio show?
I'll be honest, I was obsessed with it. And I didn't realise this till I left. So you come off air at 10 o'clock, or I used to. We'd go into a meeting. I can't stand meetings. I hate meetings. But they would be suggesting things and preparing things for the next day. But then you'd go home with all this in your head, and I would think, right, I've got to look up something about that, or so you might be right. Tomorrow we've got Keir Starmer on, and we're doing something about breastfeeding in public, and we're doing something about COVID rules or whatever. And so I would look this sort of stuff up. I would listen to podcasts, and also I'd be preparing all the fun things in the show. So I'd be tweeting stuff out. I would be writing quiz questions. We'd have built-in features. So it was just all day. I'd be thinking about the next day's show. And then you get a call or you get a message saying, actually, Keir Starmer's not going to be on now. We're going to do that on Thursday. So we've got this instead. So you'd look at that. And then I'd be sending out tweets at 8 o'clock at night to the listeners saying, we're doing this, we're doing that. And so we'd have some sort of responses to start the show with at 6 in the morning. But that was way over the top looking back. I was absolutely obsessed with it. I remember blaming my children for eating up my concentration abilities, because I always had a book on the go. I always used to be able to read and stuff like that. And then I said, hey, I've never read a book since I had kids. And then I finished the radio show and I read a book and I went, it wasn't the kids. It was the radio show. Yeah. I was obsessed with it, because I wanted it to be good. I was absolutely cared about every show, and I used to joke with the team and say, come on, we're leaving nothing on the pitch today, and we'd have a right laugh. We laughed every day. I made sure of that, but it was focused, and it was, I'd put thought and preparation into every show.
And I think what everybody always wants to know about morning breakfast shows is, what time did you get up?
So, usually got up at 4 o'clock, but then I started to get up at 3 o'clock.
Okay.
Because I drew a children's book while I was doing the radio show. That was my first sort of foray into art and stuff like that. And
what was the children's book called?
It was called The Last Coal Miner.
Oh.
And it was set years after all the pits had closed. And these children are playing by a pit wheel memorial. And it starts to spin round. The ground opens and this lift comes up and there's this mysterious coal miner. And it's a bit like the snowman. They take him home and the mother is a journalist. She gets shocked, but then she writes about him. He becomes famous. And then the authorities get interested and the children send him back down. It's sad at the end. If you want to get something done, a project over the line, this book called The One Thing has this method, and it says you've got to make appointments with yourself and you've got to build stuff in, and it tells you how to do that. And so the only way I could do that, it gives you sort of a timeline to make it work. So that meant I had to draw a picture before work and after work. I didn't even tell my wife. It was about halfway through, she thought I was getting up at 4. And she said, are you getting up at 3? And I went, yeah, I'm drawing this. But oh, you're mad. Because I knew she'd say I was mad, so I didn't tell her. What's the point? On the way home, I would pop into the library to draw the second picture.
Was that your first children's book?
That was my first children's book. I've done a few since now and drawn quite a few, and I've got another one that's out next year in 2026. That I've drawn. I'd love to do a lot more of that.
Am I right in thinking you joined the radio show, but you were a stand-up comedian before then? So you'd gone from being a monk. Yes,
I left that to do comedy because I was living in London.
Yeah,
I had to do loads of jobs just to get me through poverty.
Yeah.
And then I went from a vow of poverty in the order to being actually poor, as someone who lives in London with scrappy jobs. And then got the comedy going. The comedy sort of took off, and then I became a full-time comedian, actor. I ended up in sitcoms, and then out of that came the radio offer.
So you went from from something that was very morning focused
Yes.
to something that was very evening focused to something that was very morning focused again.
I found that very difficult. So I remember going from the order to living in halls of residence. The religious house was quite a quiet, lovely, peaceful sort of place, to this cacophonous halls of residence where there's fire alarms going off, students having wild parties, which I had joined in with a bit because I'd never been 18 or 21, so I went through a little bit of a, crazy time just adjusting. I went from very early mornings to very late nights, driving up and down the country, stopping at service station for a ginster's pasty at 3 o'clock in the morning, very unhealthy lifestyle. I must admit, I think I prefer getting up really early. My sleep patterns and my routines have been wrecked for the rest of my life with that sort of shift. Even when we're on holiday or Saturdays, weekends, I'm still first up usually by a long way.
Do you do the stereotypical dad's come back, he's already been for the walk to the lighthouse?
Yeah, that sort of thing. Well, I do. I used to drag my kids around Park Run and put them off that for life. No, don't want to do that anymore because I used to kid them into it and sort of, when I was dead popular and their hero and everything, they would do it for me. We do it once a year. I get them to do, there's a Whitley Bay one that is really nice around Father's Day. So that's my Father's Day gift from them, is that they have to do Park Run with me.
We do the Whitley Bay one. We do it once a year and we do it on New Year's Day.
Oh,
and
lovely.
That's it.
Yeah.
Because if you've said you've done it on New Year's Day, then
you're sorted. There you're set up for the year, really, then, aren't you? Yeah, we did the Christmas Day one once, which was brilliant. All that Santa hats. I love Park Run.
Oh, it's great fun. So in my head, I want you to set my stereotype right, because in my head, when you're a monk, you eat porridge. So what were your breakfasts like?
Breakfast was just a very normal, boring sort. Actually, when I went back to the monastery, Father John had made scones in the morning. That's how early he got up. He got up really early and made scones for everyone. They were warm, they were lovely, and really nice. And have you got up and made these this morning? Yeah, I got up extra early because we had guests. But I think porridge probably was there somewhere, but it wasn't a main staple.
And I feel as well, you've gone from monks in the priesthood, very healthy lifestyles, abstaining from much alcohol.
Well, you'd be surprised. That was one of the vices that they allowed. I was surprised by monks made mead at Lindisfarne, so historically they can put it away.
The originals.
Yeah.
And then you went to stand-up comedy.
When I left the order and I entered student life, I went crazy for 4 or 5 years. And then I started to do the stand-up properly. And I can remember losing a gig or two with hangovers and stuff like that. And I thought, I don't want to waste this. I enjoy this too much. And I saw casualties along the way from early on. You're playing in clubs and pubs and bars, and sometimes part of the pay is drink. Oh, there's a couple of drinks for you guys there in the green room, and you get a drink token on the night, and a way of decompressing can be getting hammered. Yeah. And it just goes with it sometimes. And I thought, I'm not very good with it. So I'm all or nothing at all, me. So I just stopped probably 2000 around. Just after that, I just went, I'm not drinking anymore.
You sound like somebody who is very good at making and keeping promises to themselves. You have an idea and then you do it.
Yes, it annoys me family. It's so annoying to be with because it just come across a bit, oh, he's perfect and all that sort of stuff. But I know who I am. I know what I'm like. So I don't trust myself. Mm-hmm. So, for instance, with when I was on the radio show, and I originally did the afternoon show, which is probably the time of day when a lot of people slump and get a bit tired. That's when I would get a bit tired. And I would think, oh, God, this is when I'm working. This is when I'm meant to be right up. Come on. So I was starting to eat 3 or 4 bars of chocolate out the vending machine at work. And I thought, this is not right. I'm putting a bit of weight on. So I thought, right, I just won't eat chocolate again.
And you just...
So I just stopped eating chocolate. Well, that's driven my family mad. And
you wouldn't have an advent calendar?
No, I just don't eat chocolate anymore. The only time I broke my duck I interviewed the guy who founded Hotel Chocolat at the Crown Plaza.
Research.
So research, and for a moment, to create a good moment, I told him, I said, I haven't eaten chocolate, and he looked so deflated. I said, but I'll eat it if you teach me how to eat it properly, because I knew he'd like to do a chocolate taste test.
Would you say that you are a particularly healthy person then, Alfie?
Certainly for people my age, I would say I'm fairly healthy. I like to do park run. I like to do the odd bike ride. I like to eat fairly healthy. Yeah. I don't drink. I don't smoke. But I could still be fitter. I could still be... There's still loads of other stuff I'd love to do more of.
It sounds as well like you've managed to maintain really good connections with the people in different parts of your life. Would you say that that's very important to you as well?
Yeah. And I tend to avoid things like reunions or get-togethers or parties. But I went to one last week with all BBC people, obviously quite a few new people who I didn't know there. I just spoke to one or two people. If I go to those things, I interview people.
Yeah.
That's my default mechanism to me get out of jail card. But I do keep in touch with people from afar. I've always sent Christmas cards and letters and things like that, and I still try and do that kind of thing.
And if you had a morning where you had no work booked in, which the more I talk to you, I think might sound like might not ever happen.
No.
But if you could spend your morning doing whatever you wanted, what would you do?
Or drawing pictures with a cup of coffee. Or watching old movies, that kind of thing. But generally, I like to draw.
Is it mostly children's illustrations that you do?
Yes, that kind of thing. I'm doing a show, musician pal of mine. He's great on the keyboards. I draw, overhead camera on what I draw, and we tell stories, and he plays the piano. So I'll be taking requests from the audience and drawing whether it's Disney characters, pop stars, politicians.
Do you feel like you're able to drop into your creativity quite easily then?
Yeah, unfortunately, too easily. So when it comes to real stuff like finance, getting your accounts done, all that sort of stuff, I am way off the mark. And that's where I'm very, very crazy and have to be... again, talk to myself and say, look, you've got to get this stuff in order.
Was that nurtured in you as a child? Because I know when you speak to lots of people from pit villages, they can sometimes say that was kind of frowned upon.
I spend a lot of time around my grandma's, and there was a roll of wallpaper in a cupboard. I can picture the cupboard now, and I get this roll of wallpaper on. That's where I drew all my cartoons on. And I would draw superhero characters. I invented a superhero character league where they would all have battles with each other. And then I'd like a football league table where I would fill in the scores every week and draw the cartoons of the action. And I was always doodling, drawing, creating stuff. I'd drawn chocolate boxes, anything I could get my hands on. My mum would draw for us.
So was that modelled to you then?
My dad was a coal miner, but he liked singing, so he encouraged me to sing. He always talked me through entertainment. We would watch lots of telly, watch lots of old movies, but my dad was like a really good DVD commentary. He would say, that's really good. She's a really good actor. Look what they're doing there.
Do you feel like the kind of person who likes to take things apart and look at how it works?
I wouldn't say so. I think I'm not scientific. I'm not a tech person. That's what, when I give a keynote speech, I try and do it without any slides. I just talk and tell stories and maybe use a prop rather than have a clicker.
Can you tell me what happened on the morning that you went and got 4 yeses at Britain's Got Talent?
We got the train to London, and I can remember turning up to the theatre, and we knew we were getting towards the right theatre. It was the Dominion Theatre, because we just saw, like, clearly circus acts, people with magic dogs that did tricks, troops of dancers, everyone walking in the same direction. We're definitely going the right place here. That would be my memory of the day. I remember on the train going down with my double act partner, having to rehearse because they'd changed their minds about what we could do. So we were still doing it on the train going down.
You must have an incredible memory, because when I watched your mimicment, it's deceptive because it looks really simple, but that's a lot of skill and work.
We rehearsed it at the BBC, And then ITV, Britain's Got Talent, got in touch with us and said, will you not do that? Will you do something else? So we learned another sketch, which wasn't anywhere near as good. So that was about the Wednesday or Thursday. And then I think we were on the way down there, or it was close to going down there. They said, actually, will you go back to the original idea? But we did, for those who don't know, we did an A to Z of impressions. And then they said, but don't do Ant and Dec for A.
Oh,
So
why not?
I think another impressionist had already done Ant and Dec. However, we thought if we start with Ant and Dec, and our Ant and Dec as a double act was quite good with them being there, that would give us a brilliant start. And if you've got a brilliant start, you're less likely to be buzzed off. Then when they said you can't do Ant and Dec, Cal did a very good Alan Carr. So we started with Alan Carr. But it still wasn't as assured a start as with Ant and Dec. So we were always a bit worried whether it would work, you know. And David Walliams said that, and I think on the night he said, when you started saying you were going to do A to Z, if you got to C or D and it's not working, it's finished. He said, I thought it was such a risk, but he said it worked. So.
But everyone was happy, even Simon Cowell.
And he was in a really grumpy mood all day. I think he wasn't well, and I think he'd missed the previous show, and then he came in and he was a bit grumpy, but we made him laugh.
You did. It was absolutely fantastic. Do you get asked to do that now? Do people?
Well, occasionally, but very occasionally, because it's a few years ago now.
Where's your passion now?
I'm loving speaking about speaking.
Yeah.
Because I know how important it is. I know what difference it can make. And I think now is the best time in history to tell stories. Because it's the Zoom boom, it's the age of the panel and the podcast, it's the age of the Reels revolution. And I think if you don't tell stories on all of these free platforms, you're mad.
Yeah.
Because you'll be left behind, especially if you're a charity or a business. So I'm really excited about going into companies and telling them how they can do it. Because lots of people think, well, I can't, I'm not like Graham Norton, or I'm not like, you don't have to be. You don't have to be. And people don't realise how interesting they are. A factory asked me to go in and give them a session. Now, even I thought this might be a challenge, making batteries exciting. But the first battery I pointed to when I was on a tour of the factory, I said, what does that battery do? And they said, oh, that's the only battery that can work in a gadget that detects marine mammals. I went, that already in my head is a YouTube clip. It's dead easy. You just need a picture of a whale, a picture of the battery, a picture of nice whale noises. There's your YouTube short. They'd never thought of that because it's their job and it's their routine every day. There's nothing exciting about that to them at all.
Yeah.
It needed somebody else to go, that's really good and really exciting.
If you were at a hotel buffet,
yes.
What's your strategy? What are you getting?
Oh, I'm dreadful. I inhale. I eat as I go if there's a buffet. I just go along and graze. I remember being at a buffet once, usually because I'm terrible for not eating and forgetting to eat. So if I get to something like a buffet, I just, whoa, I'm going to have all of this. I remember in hotel buffets where there is everything and you're paid for it, I feel it's my duty to have as much as I can. It never works. It always backfires. We were on holiday with the kids, and I put everything on my plate. I thought I was putting had a cereal and fruit and everything. I thought, oh, that cream looks nice. So I put it on as cottage cheese. And my kids were horrified. I still ate it because I hate waste and I didn't want to make a scene. So, still brought up now.
And what would you have on a normal day then?
I try not to eat bread if I can early on. That's a recent thing, just to cut a bit of weight down. Tends to work, just eating cereal or something quite boring. I always have coffee. I do most of the cooking in our house, so we try not to have much red meat. We try and eat, generally healthily, not too much salt and pepper. You can add your own afterwards, whatever I cook. Just fairly standard, really, very unexciting.
So thank you so much for coming on. This has been absolutely amazing.
I've loved it.
Was doing all my research on all of the things, and I kept thinking, I can't wait to hear him say about that and about that. And if you're listening at home, please do check out. We're going to have everything in the show notes that we've been talking about. So do check out all of the amazing things that Alfie does, because he's a phenom.
What a lovely conversation. Thanks very much.
Thanks,
Good luck.
Alfie.
Thank you for listening to Before the Work Begins podcast with me, Jo Hutton. Don't forget to like and subscribe so that you always get to hear the brand new episodes of this podcast. You can find me on Instagram at Jo Hutton Yoga, and of course on Substack at Yoga for Tired People.